Here we are. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Freedom Exchange Sunday edition, which is usually what it is,
Yes.
right?
Occasional Wednesday.
Occasional Wednesday. We have some fun things to share with you just quickly. We've had some celebrations since we saw you last. It has been Christy's 5-year anniversary of being out of prison. How does that feel?
Yeah, it feels great. It's a good time to kind of look at where things were and where they are now and the different things that I've been able to accomplish and relationships that I've had. And yeah, it's cool. I love it.
That's a huge number.
Yeah,
That's a huge
it's amazing.
number.
Yeah, because when you get out, you never know where you're going to be, what you're going to do, where you're living, all that stuff. So,
Yeah,
and
good
then
job.
you have your business opening up in a week. Brand new
7-day
business.
countdown to a new business. You can follow me at Moxie Cafe and Market.
All right. Next time we come to Ashland, we're
yeah.
going to have beer, wine, cider, cafe, market. It's
Great
gonna be
staff, beautiful environment, beautiful views. But my hair's on fire right now.
Yeah, I know
But
it
this
is.
this is my calm, lovely visit with a
Space.
really amazing guy.
Yes.
So we have our guest is Chef Jeff Henderson, which is this guy. You guys just wait. It's amazing. But before we get started, do you want to talk about what the Freedom Exchange is?
Yeah. Okay. So the Freedom Exchange was born out of a desire to create awareness for people that have never been to prison and that don't know anything about it, and so that we can have great stories with our guests, so that they can learn who they are as people. We want to bridge communities. We want to talk about cancel culture, all sorts of things.
Shame,
Yeah,
stigma, judgment, all the stuff that just, it's amazing once you know someone's story, how much of all of that just dissolves and breaks
It
off.
falls away.
It just falls away. So we are here to fall away lots of stuff that shouldn't be attached to us.
Yes. To anybody.
to
whether you've
anybody,
been
no
in prison
matter.
or not.
Yeah.
Just people.
We are back in Catalyst again, and I just have to shout out to the staff here. They're so generous and so kind and so helpful. So if you live in Southern Oregon and you need a place to have a meeting space, a co-working, they have really cute little
Co-working
spaces with cute furniture, but it's quiet and you can get your work done if you need an office space. There's meeting spaces. They also do all this technology like what we're doing with the podcast. So Catalyst is amazing, and I would just 100% recommend them if you live in Southern Oregon and you need a space to
Yep.
do anything work related.
We also have a sponsor.
Yes.
We this episode sponsors the Modern Fan Company, which is the original. There's all sorts of fan companies, Modern Fan, but this is the original and premier source for contemporary ceiling fan designs. They produced the most complete, exclusively modern collection of ceiling fans. Their modern ceiling fans have been featured in everywhere. Dwell Magazine, Sunset, Architectural Digest, Interior Design, Florida Design, New York Spaces, Coastal Living, Elle Decor, Residential Architecture.
Wow.
Just a couple places.
That's
I
amazing.
mean, it was
well,
so long.
their stuff is just beautiful. So
Yes, and they are on the website House, and they have 29 idea books, so you can go through. It's really fun to look through there. So go check them out on their website, modernfan.com.
Thank you,
so
Modern
much.
Fan. Okay, so we're going to bring Chef Jeff in. That's just easier and more fun to say.
Yes.
Jeff served 10 years. 1988, he went in for 10 years on a drug charge. So he's got a lot of time under his belt out, which we have most of our guests haven't yet, and so it's a whole different type of story, which is really fun to talk to him. And I got lost in the internet information about him because he is fascinating and exciting, and so we're going to invite him in right now.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm excited to be here with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time. We are honored that you could carve out
An hour.
an hour with us.
That's
We are
awesome.
so honored for this. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I just did a quick little intro, not too much, but I said just that you served 10 years in 1988. Is that correct? And so
Yeah.
you've had a lot of time under your belt out, which is why our conversation is going to be so rich, because of all the things that you've done and the path you've taken and the mindset shifts that have probably happened over those years. So we just want to get into all of that. Sound good?
Yes, it does.
Okay, we're going to let you, as we go, throw out all the amazingness that you're doing. I didn't do it in your intro, so it'll come out in our talk. But I did a lot of research, and I got stuck online, could not get off because I wanted to watch everything that you said.
She did a lot. She said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe
you are
Jeff's on our
captivating.
show." Yeah.
You're captivating, and no wonder the word motivational speaker is kind of part of your world. But there were a few things that stuck out to me, and I don't know if they stick out to everybody, and those are the things I immediately wanted to hear more about. And one of them, we're just going to dive in real deep because that's how we work. You were talking about that concept of being told that you are the man of the house, and it's something you hear on movies and all the time.
Everywhere.
You hear it a lot, but you had this other perspective, or at least you could articulate you embodied that when it was said to you. And I would just love you to kind of give us a little view of your childhood and how that phrase came to be, and then what that did in your mind as you were growing up.
Right. Well, that phrase comes from a deep tradition in Black families when it's a single mother who plays the role of mother and father when the father isn't in the house, right? And so many Black women during my era coming up in the 60s and the 70s, when a woman has children, many times they'll say, "I'll never bring another man in this house over my children." Because historically, when non-biological fathers, not in all the cases, I don't want to generalize it, many times when male figures come into the house and there's already children, many times those children are traumatized by these men based on their adverse childhood experiences. It's not my kid, I don't care, you do the bare minimum. And especially when that mothers have children from a new father and there's already existing children. Well, my mother made one of those statements to the fact that she would never bring a man in the house over her children. And so as I started coming into puberty and got older, and I was trying to work and do little things as a young teenager, my mother told me I was the man of the house. And so what happens when a mother tells a child, a boy, you're the man of the house, without ever having man training, what does that mean? The streets tell us that a man is someone who makes money, who provides by any means necessary. And many of the men that a lot of young Black boys grow up witnessing are hustlers, could be drug dealers, streetpreneurs, entrepreneurs, and examples of men who were violent and abusive to grandmothers, to their mother, to aunts. So it's not a good thing, but mothers do that not being conscious and not being aware because of their own traumas.
Right.
Because they may have seen their mother, another man in the house over them and abuse them, so they don't want to repeat that cycle. And so when I look back at how I became criminalized, when my mother told me I was the man in the house, I took that as a call to action. Like I had to get busy and make some stuff happen to take care of her and my sister. And so that gave birth to my criminal, I believe.
Which I'm sure any young boy would do. It would be like, wow, that's a big responsibility to put on my shoulders. I'm going to look around and see how I am. How do I become the man of the house?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then too, I don't know if any of you guys have sons, but the relationship between a boy and the mother, that umbilical cord is never cut at birth. There's a special bond, a special loyalty, special relentlessness that a boy does to protect his mother, and so he will do whatever necessary to protect her physically, mentally, and financially.
Especially when you see she's struggling and working so hard. I think like what you experienced, I could see how a young boy would rise up and go, okay, not even aware of it,
Well, and a lot of kids, even I know, parents or in your household, you step up to either emotional unavailability or whatever. You just kind of take on certain roles as a kid. You don't know that certain things aren't your responsibility, but you take that on anyway, I think.
So how did that look for you, Jeff? How did that, can you just give us a little brief trajectory into the criminal part of your journey?
Yeah. So when you lack education, you lack middle class values. You didn't grow up in a house where education was valued, where you didn't see marriage work. You never saw family work in your immediate family. You know, you lack certain things. And so that family began to be built in the neighborhood, right? And so hustling young, you know, I had a newspaper route, #1 newspaper boy, gave all that money to my mother. I was a #1 candy seller in the neighborhood where these white guys would come down in these big vans and take the little homeboys to the suburbs to sell gourmet chocolate candy. We won cash prizes, trips to Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm. So I've always been a hustler, innovator, a guy that could make something out of nothing, you know, from government cheese, government bologna, whatever it was, you know, we made it work. And so, and so when you think about people come from poverty and that word they use so far out of content today, pivoting, you know, I've been pivoting my whole life, especially when you come with lived experiences in prison. You know, our environments are constantly changing, rules and regulations. So that's something that becomes natural. And then so for me, the progression into criminal hustling came very easy because that was an underground economy that was readily available, especially for young Black and brown boys. It wasn't a whole lot of options in terms of getting jobs. So it was stealing bicycles, breaking in houses, selling the televisions and microwaves. I remember stealing my first microwave when they really started coming out in the early 80s. They were like this.
I was going to say, those were heavy.
We had one. It was, you're right.
You're like carrying it out. I would carry it out.
So imagine me coming down the alley with this microwave for sale, you know.
Huge.
And one thing led to another, you know, from that to, you know, selling weed and to eventually cocaine.
And then, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, in what town was this?
This was out of San Diego, Southeast San Diego. Yeah. But I'm originally from Los Angeles. So my sister and I, my mother's only 2 children, moved back and forth. We shuttled between my father and my mother, born and raised in LA, went to live in San Diego. My mom decided to move to San Diego to help my uncle out when he was in the Navy because his wife didn't drive. And then we were young. We went to elementary school and started junior high. And then my father said he wanted us to come with him. We went to LA. And then I started getting in trouble in Los Angeles, got kicked out of the LA Unified School District, had to go to school in Long Beach. I got stabbed there at 16. And then my father sent me back to San Diego. So it wasn't stable life, you know, and through that moving around, that exposure and that strong desire to change the circumstances grew even bigger and bigger.
I can imagine.
So would you say the drive for you to be the best paper boy and the candy sales person, would you say that was to take care of your family and to contribute, or was there more to it than that? Was that natural entrepreneur and that aiming higher
competition?
Was that in you all? Was that there also? Was it an and situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I come from 3 generations. I come from a family of entrepreneurs on both sides, my mother and father. My grandfather was King Zulu 1936 in New Orleans, and he ran nightclubs. My great great grandfather was a photographer in Mobile, Alabama in the 30s and the 40s. I still have his Polaroid camera here.
Oh, that's
somewhere.
awesome.
It's like this huge, right?
Wow.
And then my grandfather had a janitorial service, and my father was a photographer. So I grew up around hustlepreneurs, streetpreneurs. There was always a side hustle, worked a day job, had a side hustle, hot plates or something like that. So I've always been driven, never an athlete, never played sports, but I became very competitive in whatever endeavor I embraced, from selling candy to newspapers to stolen car parts, bike parts, and all the way up to selling drugs. Like when I first got into drug business, I said, I want to be the #1 drug dealer because as a young boy, I watched the older drug dealers. You know, they had the cars, the women, the money, the jewelry. They was like, you know, school.
Balling.
You know, yeah, they were balling. I mean, no one ever, school never worked for me. And because no one ever told me why I had to go to school, it wasn't reinforced at home. the school teacher lacked cultural and emotional connection to the minority children that she was in charge to teach. So no one ever see the way how some of us learn, like, so I have learning disabilities, right? So I'm the type of person that has to be connected to something. If you say go to school, focus on mathematics, science, English, all those different things, you got to connect a dollar amount to me. If my teacher would have said, look, Jeffrey, if you focus on math and science and history, this is how much money you can make. Show me that house on the hill with the white picket fence. Then I would have looked at that as a hustle.
Yeah.
You know, and I would say, you know, I'm getting straight A's because it's connected to money at the end of the rainbow.
Make it practical. Yeah.
And exactly. So we have instant gratification. We may not live to be 23 years old to ever finish college. So look, we need to get paid now. And whatever that is, that's the mentality that we had.
That's a great point. Yeah, because the school is almost like this ominous thing over there. Learn that. And you're like, well, that doesn't really sit right with me.
Yeah.
What else can I do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then too, when you grow up in a home, when your mother's uneducated, your father's uneducated, you're never challenged intellectually. Your mother never comes to the school, never have met the school teacher, never been part of the PTA. The only time the mother from poverty goes to the school is when this child is in trouble.
Yeah.
And the school calls and says, you need to pick your child up now. So that was the only visit my mother got to school. So street smarts, survival education, that reality-based education was the mantra.
Makes so much sense. I mean, it should be that way now. It makes so much sense how to make the practical and the reality of what's coming next, connect those so they make sense while you're there and when they're
That
young.
and the emotional part,
Yeah.
it could be so rich and so deep and
an important-
simple, really, if you look at it like that, but they don't. We don't do
So,
that.
you got in trouble. You went to prison. How is that Jeff from the streets showing up in prison now in that new environment? You can't just slough it off. It's who you are. So how does it show up in prison?
Well, you know, coming from poverty, you know, we are subject matter experts in surviving.
Yeah.
You know, remember when the Wall Street black market crashed and all those wealthy guys committed suicide, jumped out of the window? Because like, oh my God, I lost everything. How am I going to live? How am I going to make it? Well, we were used to being up and down, up and down, up and down. So the transition wasn't difficult. But before I got to prison, you know, even as a drug dealer, I never was really involved with gangs. I managed gang members. I was one of those guys that could go in any neighborhood. I looked at crack cocaine, a part of my life that I'm not proud of, as any type of product, whether it's a tire, a toilet, a pair of eyeglasses. How do I outsmart the competition? How do I corner the lion's share of the business? Who do I need to build strategic relationships with? And then how do I begin to opening up markets in other communities? Now, I didn't know that terminology until I got to prison, but I was always a PR machine. I was always a relationship builder, because later in life, after I'd done those personality tests, I realized that I'm a lover of people. I'm a lover of beauty. So and I'm a talker. You know, on the streets, they say, oh, he has gift of gab. But in the corporate world, they say you're a great communicator. People get degrees on, you know, delivering information and motivation and inspiration. So I was that guy who pumped up the up and coming drug dealer. Hey, man, you got this. And in the next 6 months, you're going to be buying kilos instead of ounces. You know, I mean, I was thriving. I was competitive. You know, I never used drugs in my life, never been high, never intoxicated. I don't drink, smoke, weed, cocaine. I don't drink any, I don't do any of that. My mind was always laser focused on mission. And the mission was to build wealth and to move out of that community and one day get that house on the hill with the white picket fence and travel. So that was important to me. And in the 1980s, mid 1980s, or even going back to 82, 83, going up when I got in to that business, you hear the talk about mass incarceration, right? So when you hear about it from African Americans' perspective, you hear it back in slavery from 400 years ago of mass incarceration, from the plantations to the textile industry to railroad to all of those things. But I kind of call it modern day mass incarceration in the 80s when Say No to Drugs under Nancy Reagan, Get Tough, the whole scandal about the Contra and drugs for weapons and all that. I'm 57. I was there when crack just showed up overnight.
Isn't that amazing?
We have never been I lived in San Diego for years and never been across the border. Like, what was a passport? Didn't know what that was. We didn't own 18-wheelers, airplanes, any of that stuff. It just showed up in Black communities.
Yeah.
And for the first time in Black communities, there was an underground wealth that was built, and so when you think about drug dealers, people think the gang members, those hardcore criminals. But the drug dealers I dealt with were educated, some of them. They weren't hardcore criminals. They were businessmen. They just had a criminal enterprise, right? And so they were able to take this bad product where it originated on the West Coast, Oakland, Los Angeles, clear across the country, and then outside the country into Africa, all these different places, right? Which is no different from any entrepreneur building a tech company or anything else.
Right.
It was just a product, right? And so when we got into this business, we were blinded to the impact. We had no knowledge of long-term impact of crack cocaine, from usage to even selling it, through incarceration to usage. And when I was in prison in 1990, Ebony Magazine, one of the most well-known Black magazines in the country, had an article in there, was on the front cover, and it said crack babies. And it was 2 or 3 vials of crack. And before it was called crack, it was called rock. East Coast called it crack. On the West Coast, it was called rock cocaine because it looked like little kibbles, little rocks, not really cracks, right? So we didn't sell our cocaine in vials like in New York, those little vials. Those were little crack, little small pieces that go into the pipe. On the West Coast, they were rocks, from $25 rocks to $50 rocks to G rocks, which is 100. And I don't want to, I'm glamorizing this, but there's a whole science in history how we got to this point in the challenge of mass incarceration and of especially Black and brown young people, which was very challenging. So when I was in prison, I read this and I was like, oh my God, I was a part of that, because I became conscious in prison. I read my first book in prison. Here it is right here.
Let me see.
And you can see my prison numbers
Wow.
on there, right? It was a book called Black Men, Obsolete, Single, Dangerous. And so when you think about reentry programs and how you change the trajectory of people and decriminalizing process, there is no one blueprint.
No.
Everyone has their own blueprint. Now, there's some strategies that are transferable to everyone. But for me, it was learning history. For me, it was learning self-love. For me, it was learning who I was and realizing in prison that I was very smart. And my ability to communicate, to sell, to market, to build a business, to managing people, is just that I didn't have the people around me to tell me that what I was doing illegal was transferable to legal. Until I was in prison, when I became friends with the Wall Street inmates.
Yeah, in fact, the whole time you're talking, I'm like, can you imagine if you were in a situation where you had another product, a different product, like a computer, like any kind of a computer part or a car, or there's a plethora of different products that you could have had that same skills, that have got you to the same places, but yet was not illegal. And that could
did it with food.
Yeah, that's what you're doing now.
I did it with my brand.
Yeah.
When I was in prison, I was in Toastmasters. So when I was in federal prison, at that time it was called Club Fed. I was in there with Ivan Bolsky, Michael
crazy.
Wall Street, Junk Bond Kings. And these guys taught marketing classes, business, public relations.
Love it.
There was a Toastmasters chapter in there.
Wow. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. My first speech ever in my life was 29 years ago in prison in Toastmasters on a stage for 15 minutes. Wall Street guy invited me to tell my story. And when I walked off of that stage, he was like, Jeff, He said, man, you're a smart guy. I'm like, I was just a drug dealer. What makes me smart? He says, when you was on the street, you understood all the business principle, all us white guys understood. Marketing, ability to sell, public relation, distribution, P&L, profit and loss. I just didn't know the words, but I was already doing it.
Doing it, yeah.
And he told me, he says, Jeff, he says, all you got to do is change the product, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't a product, a physical product to sell. The product was me. Right.
Yes.
And so as I built my chef brand coming out of prison, I sold myself. Yeah. I sold my skills, my ability, how I walked from prison into the corporate space, working my way up in like 5 years to an executive chef. And so how I built that relationship in prison, there's a lot of strategies to building relationships. And one of the strategies that always worked for me was food. Everybody loves to eat. And how I got close. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so, people I want to do business with, I invite them for dinner. Foie gras, prime Kobe beef, duck fat, diverse scallops, great wine, and then hook them in the stomach, and then boom, then I sell them on the product, right? and that's how I got television and book deals and all those different things. But it started in prison because, when I got fired on my job and I was in the hole, and I got out the hole, I got put in the pot and pan detail.
Yeah. Which is always the worst job in prison.
It's the worst job, but you still got extra bananas, extra cake, extra whatever that was. You got the scraps from the inmate cooks, right?
Yeah.
And then I started helping the cooks out, and I got really good and eventually became the head inmate cook. So that means my level of smuggled goods out of the kitchen became grander.
Yes.
So I had access to the scrap chicken, red onions, hard-boiled eggs, cheese, everything. And so what I did with that, I started an underground catering business.
I love it. Yeah.
And then I started selling and fixing up the top ramen concoctions for the wealthy Wall Street guys. So I fed them food and ingredients, and they fed me business acumen and knowledge and gave me access to them. Because, prison is segregated. Whites have their TV room, blacks have theirs. I was one of the only few brothers that was in the white guy Wall Street TV room because I was hungry. They was teaching me. I was learning Newsweek magazine, 60 Minutes, 2020. And I became well-traveled through 60 Minutes in 2020 and National Geographics. Wow. So I experienced the world through just looking at pictures and stuff. I travel every year, twice a year sometimes, out of the country, in the country. I've been to every state in the continental U.S., including Canada, Alaska, Hawaii, South America, Central America, Europe, because that's how you grow.
Yeah.
And that's how you're able to
expand.
So I have to interject a little bit because we both are the entrepreneur mindset and we both totally jive with what you're saying. And that came for me, and it sounds like for you, out of the womb. Like that's just how I was born, to have that mentality. But I think that anybody can have that mentality if the right people are around them, giving them a perspective shift and like identifying their giftings, identifying, hey, I see this in you, and I see this, like you're really kind of free spirited and you're not scared to ask anybody anything. And then I'm a little more aggressive and say yes to hard things. Like whatever that strength is, somebody told me that along the way. And then I started paying attention to that in myself and then going and doing those things. And I'm wondering, well, we can get into that probably with what you're doing right now, but everyone has what you're talking about. But what is it that some people choose to grasp it and some people choose to just ignore those strengths in ourselves to do the things that you're doing they're so fun to hear because it was all as a natural progression of how you looked at yourself and what you knew your strengths were and your goals and your vision. And something you said and something I listened to said, criminalizing your gifts, but those have always been your gifts. You've always sensed those as your gifts. And so I want to find a way that, anybody that comes across our path, it's nice when we can highlight their gifts to them because who knows who it.
Well, I know the way. I mean, I believe it's believing in people, having your ears open enough to be willing to listen to when I say, hey, you know what, you're so good at this. Yeah. Because even even when I was out, when the judge is like, you need to be in college, what are you doing? And just her saying those words, I had that stirring in my body. But when someone from the outside that's not your mother or father generally says something that they see in you, it almost like, I don't know if it's the same way for men, but it gives a little permission to delve into that a little bit. And then when you watch it grow, then it's like, I am the person now that's going to tell you and you and you all the amazing things that I see in you. So it's belief, right, Jeff? Or what do you think?
And then so let's talk about the gift, your strengths and your weakness, because knowing your weaknesses is just as important as
Yeah,
knowing
that's true.
strength, right? And so the biggest challenges with people is we spend a lot of money, time, and effort behind trying to become an expert at what we naturally suck at, because we have yet to identify what our true gift is. And this is how I explain it. The gift is the one thing, maybe two things, that you do extremely well at a very high level is the gift, right? And so God gave us all gifts.
Yeah.
He's not going to discriminate and say, okay, you 1 million people get gifts and no one else doesn't, right? But gifts go unrecognized if you're never exposed.
Yeah.
This is why exposure is important. Reinforcement, having the right relationships with the right people is important. So when you get exposed, you get to see different careers, different things going on. And then when you see something that's attractive to you, it tells that little voice that, I like that. Maybe I can do that.
Yeah.
Or if you do something extremely well, and like you, Christine, when someone identify your strength and reinforce that to you, you said, aha, maybe that's it, right? So it takes other people to recognize your strength. So when you come from poverty and uneducated parents and trauma and adverse childhood experiences, our parents doesn't have the vision to see your strengths, right? So I got in trouble and whipped because of the grades I failed in. Imagine if my mother said, forget what you suck at, let's focus on what you do extremely well. I got 1A in my life consistently in drafting, right? It was something about connecting dots. You know, that 45-degree angle, that little chrome thing with the number 2 pencil, you do these shapes. I got an A in it. No one paid attention. Everyone paid attention to where I was failing.
Wow.
So we have to begin to think differently in our approach in education, right?
Love that.
So my aha moment came in prison when a guy who didn't even look like me told me that I was smart. That gave me validation because he was a very wealthy man. He says, Jeff, I never had a fight when I was selling drugs on the street. I never had beef with anybody on the streets, in prison, nowhere. I was the guy who just found common good in everyone. And so when this guy told me, he says, I had about $1 million by the time I was 19, 20 years old in Foot Locker Air Jordan boxes, right? And so making money has always been something I've done well. But once I zero in on the gift, right? Once you become a subject matter expert, are you guys familiar with the 10,000 hour rule?
Yes.
Okay. So Malcolm Gladwell talked a lot about that in his book, The Outliers, right?
I
And
love that
so
book.
Bill Gates, Guy Kawasaki, Marcus Buckingham, who worked for Gallup poll for 20 years, studying the world's most effective leaders and managers, talk about when you find your gift and you put it into practice over 10,000 hours, that allows you to become a subject matter expert. And so this is people who are wealthy, who are successful. There's a reason why they're successful, because they only hustle and focus on the gift and put people around them who are subject matter experts where they suck at, what their weaknesses are. So this is what makes people frustrated, because I'm in the workforce development business, right? So why most people are frustrated on the job, they're bitter, they're angry, they gossip, they don't want to go to work, they're unhappy, is because they're operating outside of their purpose.
Right.
That wasn't what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So for me, I have been a natural teacher my whole life. Like I always train people how to sell candy, newspaper route. I train, again, I'm not proud of this moment of my life, but even how to hustle drugs, you know, all the way down to as a cook, as a chef, what I do today, you wouldn't believe the people, like I give free, I don't charge for coaching, right? Or if somebody calls me, say, Jeff, I want to be a speaker. I love to speak for that company. I connect them, they go with it. I take no percentage, right? So this is why I love what I do. I know my heart is in the right place. I've been doing it for 30 years. I've been out for 25 years now. And so I found my voice and I found my lane, right? And sometimes your gift will elevate you into other gifts. Yep. There's gifts within the gift. And so this is why our people in prison in reentry space, right? We focus on getting a job, right? Building a brand, re-imaging and things like that. But we need to start focusing on how do you become the better you? What is your gift? You know, what makes you tick? What is your strengths? What are your weaknesses? The power of relationships, right? How do you start embracing middle class value systems? People get out of prison. I can't get a job. I can't build a relationship. It's because your value systems don't allow you to build certain relationships until you embrace those values, meaning lifestyle, where you eat at, where you socialize at, what library do you go to? When I was in LA fresh out of prison, and then as coffee shops begin to come, every time I went to Starbucks, I went to Beverly Hills Starbucks. Why? Everyone that goes to Beverly Hills and Starbucks is wealthy. They're entrepreneurs, they're movie writers, they're directors, they're literary agents, they're movie agents, TV agents. So everyone has laptops open, Apple computers. What I'm gonna be in the hood for at Starbucks, right? Everybody's where I'm at. I wanna be where the movers and shakers are. You know, I clean shaved my face. I took makeup, covered my earring all up. I improved my vocabulary. You know, I put my costume on. Everybody has to wear a costume. And coming from prison and having that type of trauma, we have to diffuse the prison stigma, the prison culture, in order to get access to the right people so they can open doors for us so we can be who we're supposed to be.
I like this.
Wait, hold on. I need a minute. That was so well said.
I know.
I feel like we just went to church.
And there's nothing else we can add more beautifully than you do.
I love it.
Something I say a lot to my staff and my kids is it's like about perspective. If you don't like the view, change it. And it's exactly what you're saying is you change your surroundings so that you change what you're seeing, your view, and all that can come from that. I love that so much, and it's our responsibility to change that view or perspective on things. The facts can always be the same. Your childhood, your variables in your life are different than the variables in our life, but it's the perspective I choose to have on it. Am I a victim to it, or am I going to learn from it and rise above it? And I love, I've heard you talk a lot about all of that you did with that. And Zoom isn't really the best place for you to give the example of how you changed your walk, because I love when you describe the kind of the swag you had when you're on the streets versus if you're
even prison swagger. You know, we stand with our back against the wall. We're very observant, cold faced. We're watching, we're looking, and all those different things, and all about how we move. And so you have to be aware of all of that, because the general public, they know what that mindset looks like. And they know when you come in for a job that, you know, there's been some challenges in your life, right? Whether there's some type of addiction, incarceration, or some type of setback. So prison is the best place. And that's where I believe that the majority of reentry dollars should be spent on the inside versus the outside, because in prison you have a captive audience, right? And so when you have a captive audience, they're laser focused on the messenger and the message. Once you get out of prison and you go get your favorite food, distractions, you get a phone, you start having relationships, then you go to a reentry training. It's tough.
Hey, Jeff, I'm sorry if I've missed this, but do you do anything in the prisons? Because everything you've just said on our show, I know it's like, have you focused on that, or do you like the idea of attaching to the inside?
Oh, yes. I've been going inside of prisons for over 20 years. I've been in federal and state prisons all across this country, from New Jersey to Florida to New York to Connecticut to Texas, Alabama, Arizona.
love
California.
So
Yes.
my next question with that is, from your community, do you get any pushback because you go to the Beverly Hills Starbucks and you changed how you walk and you get manicures and pedicures? Like, do you get pushback? I use the word selling out. You use the
Well,
word
some people say, I want to be my own
authenticity.
true self and then
Yeah.
continue on this path that's getting them nowhere.
Yeah, and I respect that.
Yeah.
Like I respect, people who say let's keep it 100, right? I'm not selling out. I'm keeping my locks in my hair or my long blonde ponytail, my steel toe boots with the biker chain. That's all fine, right? But when you start to realize that culture, or that you may have embraced, or let's not even say culture, let's go below culture, subculture, right? You have Black culture, white culture, then you have tons of other cultures within those cultures, right?
Yeah.
So I made a specific choice because when I was in prison with the Wall Street guys, I learned the power of how you get access, right? I understood that in order to be who I wanted to be and become the best version of myself, I had to go amongst them to get the game. Life is a game. It's called chess, right? It's just making strategic moves, right? And what I say is that there is a small percentage of people that run the world, that have wealth, who have generational wealth. So who am I gonna roll behind? The broke person that wants to be 100 and say, keep it real? No, I'm rolling with the ones who can help me get access so I can create opportunities for those who want to get out the hood.
That's
right?
exactly what I was thinking. Because then now what you're doing in the nonprofit, you're creating this space for all these people to be like, hey, here's some opportunity. And, because
And
you
people
have
can
that
choose to
wherewithal.
grab it or not, but you're
Yes.
creating the opportunity and the space to do that. I love that.
And I know who I am. I'm a Black man, always will be. I love the hood. My school is in the most dangerous neighborhood in Las Vegas, on North Las Vegas and Pecos Boulevard. I don't have no problems over there.
Yeah.
My style of how I roll is that's how I want.
I love it.
Right? Everybody's roadmap is different. You know what I'm saying? My heart is still the heart that I've always had, is that I just don't think the way I used to think, right? And I love living life on my terms. And so how someone else may view me or give me pushback for how I get down, hey, that's their prerogative.
That's
It
on
don't
them.
bother me because I make my own way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah. Someone asked me, man, how you get a job at the Bellagio? Changed the way I walk. And then once I got in the Bellagio, I went back to walking how I used to walk. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Let me get in there.
That's right. Right. Get your hair down after you get on probation.
I love this encouragement so much. Like, find your giftings and surround yourself with people and environments that what you want to aim for, and don't just settle for what doesn't feel right, what's not working for you.
Yeah, and it's one thing, especially now with social media, and we have access to see so many people. When you're starting out, I'll speak for myself, as I'm speaking and sharing, sometimes I'll see other people and I'll think, oh wow, I might need to learn more and fill in the blank. I'm like, well, that's not really my thing. So I have to really keep bringing it back to be like, that's them, and let me be
your strengths
be me.
are different.
Yeah,
Yes,
and the thing is too, it's like I have to remember, and based on what you said, that whatever I'm doing, do the thing that lights me on fire, that I'm really good at, and let other people do the things that they're good at, so that can excel instead of me trying to do everything. And I'm working on that.
Yes, just like you two as the host of the Freedom Exchange Project, right? You're not technician people. This is why you have the guy sitting across from you doing what you may suck at, and that's what you do.
Yeah, and we did suck for a year doing it ourselves, and then now we're not. So, hey.
That is very true.
Yeah,
and that's how successful people, listen, Steve Jobs founded Apple. He did not create the device.
Right.
He had the vision, was his gift, the vision. And then he hired all the people in areas that he was no good at. Design, the glass, the buttons, the cases. He doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love the vision part. That's our favorite. We have
do.
so many
We
big
do.
plans.
And I
We have
just, because we're going to switch gears and move into the other part of the show, but I really love the idea of focusing on the relationships, focusing on people, and really keeping our eyes wide open to seeing people for who they are, hearing their stories, finding out their giftings, because once you have those relationships, all of a sudden, all these resources and these
Open up.
opportunities and all these things open up, which leads into like just abundance. And it can be abundance, whether obviously maybe financially, but if not, just a richness in life that wouldn't be there if we
Absolutely.
didn't focus on the seeing something interesting and beautiful in everybody that we.
And not being afraid to reach
Yes.
out. And, even if it's a senator and saying, hey, can I get your cell phone? And they give it to you. And then you're like, all right, I got a senator's cell phone. Let's keep going, Love that.
Yeah, I remember last year I called my senator for something.
I know,
and
you did good. I was so
Someone's
proud
like,
of
call
you.
your senator. That's what they're for. I'm like, I'm not calling my senator about this thing. And they're just try it. Guess who answered the phone?
And
my
it works.
senator.
Yeah.
So it works.
It's being willing to get out of your comfort zone just a little bit and know that you are no higher, no lower than anybody else. And and I think when we do that, it creates a healing in all of humanity. It may sound a little kumbaya, but that's how we do our little part in healing and connecting each other, through all the richness. I love it.
We're getting texts and things from our viewers that are loving this
Love you.
episode, and I need to put my phone away because they're coming in. People are really enjoying this, Jeff. You're nailing it, and
I want to go to Las
it's
Vegas.
so good. I
And
know.
it's so weird to me thinking that I was on Con Air crying, flying over Las Vegas Strip, and I saw the Bellagio fountains. You were probably there.
You're probably there.
I don't know where I'm going.
Before we move into our that's what he's doing. Before we move into our speed round, which is one of the last things we do, can you talk about kind of when you got out, your jobs and like your jobs from then to now, because you've done so, not just jobs, but things you've done. I just want our viewers to kind of get a full meal deal here on all that you've
that's
done.
That's going to be over the top.
Yeah. I just want to sit and listen.
Here's the quick one. So in Hollywood, when you pitch for TV shows and and stuff like that, they want the elevator pitch. Like you might have 2 minutes to sell your story. So you guys want to get that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Walked out of prison in 1996, October the 2nd, took my first job at Gatsby's at 672 Wilshire and La Brea, which was a California French restaurant for a renowned chef named Robert Gatsby. Worked for Thomas Keller, Joe Robuchon, Alan Ducasse. And I was his dishwasher, I was his janitor, and he taught me about the industry, taught me a lot of middle-class values. He taught me about global cuisine. And then after I worked with him for about a year and a half, I moved on and went into the hotel business because I wound up having a kid. My wife and I had our first child, Jeffrey Jr., who's now 20, going to return 25. And I went to work for Marriott and then opened a Marriott in San Diego, Coronado Island, LAX Marriott. And then I went to work for Ritz-Carlton in Marina Del Rey, worked with some famous James Beard and chefs over there, and went on to open some nightclubs in Beverly Hills, and eventually went to work for the 5-star 5-diamond Hotel Bel Air in Bel Air. And there I became the first African-American banquet chef. I was a chef tournant, worked there for a while, and then went on to the 5-star 5-diamond hotel called L'Ermitage on Burton Way in Beverly Hills. And then I set my sight on Las Vegas in the year 2001. Came to Vegas. Everyone said, Jeff, don't quit your job. You're not going to get hired. You're a felon. I said, I don't when someone tells me no, that's a challenge for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then and I wrote about that in the first chapter of my book, 6 Courses in 60 Minutes. And so I went to Vegas. Everyone turned me down in Las Vegas. My wife and son and daughter was in LA. And so they asked me, so everyone turned me down. I was on my way out of town. And my wife said, honey, you didn't go to Caesar's Palace, right? And so I didn't want to go to Caesar's because I used to be a high roller at Caesar's back in the 80s, going to the prize fights. And if you look at the HBO fight with Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvelous Hagler, you'll see me coming down the steps with my crew. We have
we got to see that now.
all of that stuff. And
I know what I'm doing tonight.
Yeah, there was a rich history of trauma there. I mean, I was a bad guy at that place, and I said, what am I going to do working there? And so my wife went behind my back, sent her my resume, and I got a call from the chef. Jim Perello. He was an Italian guy from the Bronx, New York. He came, I went to interview with him, came in, I had a resume, everything. He asked me one question. He said, Jeff, do you ever kill anybody? I said, no, sir. He said, can you cook? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, come cook for me and my team, and then we'll have a conversation. I came there. They only wanted 6 courses. I gave him 7 because he being a Black man, convicted felon, no culinary training. I had to do more. I had to do extra. So I blew them away. They hired me, got promoted to the first African-American chef de cuisine at Caesars, the same place I was a high roller.
I love that.
I got photos of me and Caesars limos and in the casino when I was a drug dealer. And now I have the photos of me being a chef, right?
Yeah.
And then left there and eventually went to Hard Rock Hotel, ran the steakhouse. And my dream was to get at the Bellagio, the Big B, the Bentley, and went to the Bellagio Hotel. They finally hired me, became the first African-American executive chef, run a $30 million restaurant. And then one day I got a phone call, literary agent, Mike Saltis in New York, said, hey, Jeff, hey, I heard about your story. Would you want to write a book? I said, I never really thought about it. He said, I'd love to fly out and meet you. I said, okay. He flew out. We sat at the table. We wrote a proposal. He said, if I get a book deal, I'll call you back. He went back to New York. He sent the proposal to all the top publishing houses, and everybody wanted to do my life story. And so the book went in what you call auction, where there was a bidding war on who does it. So I wound up picking William Morrow because they had a cookbook background. And so we wrote the book Cook, from the streets to the stove, from cocaine to foie gras. And then Mike called me as the book was getting ready to come out. I said, hey, Mike, what's up? I'm like grinding in the kitchen. He said, man, you're not going to believe this. He said, what? I said, what? He says, you're going on Oprah. I said, holy shit, Oprah? Man. So everything was happening fast. Book deal, boom, hit Oprah in 2008. Then after the Oprah interview, I was in New York, phone ring again. Hello, Chef Jeff, may I help you? Hey, Chef Jeff, what's up, man? This is Will Smith, right? I said, who's playing on my phone? Big Willie from Philly. He says, man, I just watched you on Oprah. Then I got real, I was all corporate. Hello, Chef Jeff, may I help you? Then when I really realized it was Will Smith, I got, hey, man, what's up, homie? What's up, man? I went real street, right? I had to chameleonize a little bit. And then he was filming I Am Legend up in Brooklyn. And he sent his friend to pick me up. He said, look out for white Lincoln Navigator. My buddy's going to pick you up and bring you up. So then I saw the Lincoln Navigator. The guy flagged me down. He jumped out the car. You wouldn't believe who it was who came to pick me up. It was Heavy D.
Oh, that's
heavyweight lover in the house, right?
Heavyweight lover. Wow.
Yeah, we spent an hour in the Navigator going up to the set. Went up there, met his whole family, Steve Tisch, Jason Blumenthal, all the escape artist executives that does all of Denzel's and Will Smith movies. I spent the whole day there.
Wow.
And by 5 o'clock that evening, we had a multi-million-dollar movie deal. Left there, went back home to Las Vegas. I had to make a decision because they gave me 30-day leave of absence to go sell the book. And then my wife called me, said, honey, U.S. Airlines called and they want you to speak. This is before they merged with American Airlines. And I said, okay, cool. I'm thinking, $1,000, $1,500. She called me back 30 minutes later, screaming the phone. Honey, you're not gonna believe this. I said, well, calm down. I thought something happened to my kids, right? She said, they're gonna $30,000 for a keynote.
Wow.
For 20 minutes. Two talks for 20 minutes, keynote for $30,000, right? And then I went to the computer and I Googled up public speaking. I said, shit, I'm in the wrong business. I wrote my resignation letter and I left the Bellagio. And I've been on my own ever since. And then that came the Food Network deal, the Chef Project, where I took system impact to young people, launched a catering company, taught them life skills. Then I went on to do 4 other TV shows and 4 other books. My first cookbook, Chef Cooks, right, was a great deal I got with Scribner, right? Multi-billion-dollar publishing house. And so they wanted to move quickly to get the cookbook out by the time my Food Network primetime show launched. And so I had to rush. So I wound up dumping about 40 BOP prison recipes in that book, right? And they never knew, not to the day, right?
Oh,
so
gosh, your favorite.
I always say the only difference between prison cuisine and gourmet cuisine is the china and the ingredients. So I took prison meatloaf, made it sexy, fried chicken, spaghetti, all that type of stuff. And I never looked back. And so I've been extremely blessed. I've been blessed because my heart was always in the right place. I never chased television, being everything that I've done, somebody came to me. I just stayed steadfast in my gift, getting those 10,000 hours in and more, and continue to pay it forward. Since I've been out for 25 years, I've been working with young people in prisons, juvenile facilities. This has never been. I just launched a 501c3 last year. I've always just done it out the kindness of my heart. I don't get paid to go into prisons. I just do it and coach other people. And a lot of people who get out of prison, they seek me out for the Chef model. You know, they want to write a book. And I always tell people, fresh coming out of prison, I said, it's too early, right? You have the backstory. You have the prison story. Now you need a successes out, because there's a lot of drug dealing stories out there that's bigger than mine. People wrote about me is because I became a chef, right? At very prestigious places, who never been to culinary school. And so they found that very intriguing and interesting. It's not like I just this big time drug dealer who had this crazy story.
Right.
It wasn't that crazy. I wasn't shooting people, carrying guns, involved with gangs. I was in the right places at the right time. So when you talk about keeping it so-called 100, staying who you always been versus being who you're supposed to be, I would have never have been able to build the relationships and gotten access to the type of career opportunity with that homeboy swagger.
Yep. So good. So good.
I just need to let that sit in a second. Yeah.
We have to.
That's amazing.
Aiming high.
And all the
and
media
believing.
came. Good Morning America, Today Show, full spreads in People magazines, Ebony, Jet.
Sexiest man
Newsweek.
alive.
Haven't gotten there yet.
sexy.
I think I passed that date, right?
No, you don't.
Oh,
now
man.
they got sexiest 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds.
They got me when I first came home. I was buff. I had a six-pack, you know? Yeah, I have no pack now.
I like when you've talked about that before, where you can tell that you get out of prison because your upper body is really huge, but then you're skinny down below because you wanted to be real.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. And that's a lot of, I go to prisons all the time and I say, you guys, stop lifting weights. Stop lifting weights, because people know that prison built arms and chest, unportioned. Real bodybuilders do the whole body, calves, glutes, hamstrings, and then these guys have no ass and no legs. Up the top.
True. That's so
Build this, lift this, work this. You know?
So good.
I don't touch weights. I'm done. I don't do any of that.
You're looking good.
Yeah, and everything that you just spoke about transcends prison. It really goes into every young man or woman growing up or coming out of school, or, you know, building a family, and all the different ways that, you know, to be successful is really staying true to who you are, live in abundance. And if you're living in your gift and your power, then you're naturally going to be, it's going to be easier to say okay to other people, and to not, you know, just you're in that flow. So in that flow of life.
And my takeaway is just perspective is the juxtaposition between being a streetpreneur and an entrepreneur, and the juxtaposition between the two different kinds of ways you can walk. Like, it's your perspective on it, and what are your end goals with the thing, whatever it is.
What do you want to achieve?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Because we have like 2 minutes or so. Do we want to try to do a few?
I have a couple of questions for you.
We have a speed round that's just kind of a fun, quick answer, one-word answer, just to end our show. But we would love to talk to you for like 5 more hours.
I know.
Okay.
He won't let us.
I know.
He's too busy. Okay, so where's the last place that you've flown to?
San Diego.
Are you a morning or night person?
Morning.
What emotion gets you the most trouble?
Erratic thinking.
What is the product you can't live without? This will be interesting from a chef. Ooh, coffee. And what kind of coffee do you drink?
Cheap Folgers crack coffee.
Oh, no.
Stop it.
This is from a girl who's opening a coffee shop.
I heat the water in the microwave like in prison, and I take a nice heaping amount of Folgers coffee, dump it in, stir it, and I add peppermint mocha.
That sounds like
That
you.
sounds like me. Yeah,
Boom,
I kind of
and then I'm like on fire.
No judgment. Do your thing.
Okay.
I
drink high-end coffee too when I'm in that element.
Come to me. I'll give you the Yeah.
Okay. If you were running for office, what would your campaign slogan be?
The power of potential in every community across America.
There you go. Yes.
We would vote for you. What's the number one thing that makes you smile?
Seeing my mom.
And does she live in Las Vegas or San
She lives
Diego?
in San Diego.
Oh, she does.
Oh,
At least twice a month, yeah.
I love that. Well, do you have any? We're kind of done, and we were so fortunate, and it was such an honor to have your time.
I am so inspired. I am ready.
I know I'm ready to
kick
go
some
rock it,
ass.
especially when I'm opening a business in 7 days. I'm
Yeah,
like, you
she
just got
is.
me going. So
Yeah.
All right,
maybe-
good
no.
stuff. Well, first
Yeah.
of all, I want to say I am proud of you two, right?
Thank you.
For, first of all, staying persistent. Persistence is key, let me tell you. When I wanted to meet top people in that former business I was in, I stayed persistent. Changing cars, latest sneaker, gear, jewelry to become attractive to the person who I wanted to do business with. So I've been watching you guys from afar, and I said, they're on me. Let's just do this. Right?
Get that girl off my
Absolutely.
butt.
Yeah. Well, I think what you guys it's important what you're doing, giving system impacted, underserved people a voice to, share who they are, share best practices of living your best life,
Yeah.
or whatever that may be. And, we live in a time now where everybody's voice can be heard.
yeah.
Absolutely.
The only time your voice got heard if the newspaper wrote about you or you was on TV.
Yeah.
And you guys have created a platform. So I would love to come back some other
Yes.
time, or maybe even do a cooking demo or something.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Have a group. And I would
Especially-
love-
Yeah.
I would
especially
love-
because she's doing her new Moxie Cafe Marketplace.
I
in a
just
week.
appreciate the perspective and putting it out there. You just are so articulate about it, obviously, because you've had lots of time to get those words and those concepts
passion.
living it yourself. But our viewers, no matter if you're system impacted or not, we all can live in some form of prison or self-protection or self-limiting beliefs. And just what we experienced today, even though we don't always live in that space, I'm super jacked up right now and ready to
too.
take on the world. So,
Yes.
You better stay hungry. If not, you won't eat.
well,
are
and it's
hungry.
contagious. I'm going to say it's
Yeah.
contagious. So,
Well, yeah, because every time you get to the next spot or the next person or the next opportunity, you're like, what else? What else? And you just see it blossom, and that you have this fire in your belly that I've never had, and that I would have never imagined getting it in a place that I'm in now. Like, especially I think it's great that you were the chef at Caesar's in the same place that you were, living the baller life. I love that story. That's my favorite story. It's awesome. Thank you, Jeff. so
Jeff,
much.
thank you. We will be in touch, and we will have another time.
Okay, good. Take care, you guys.
Thank
you, you
you.
too.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.